and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on pronoun and antecedents, right? Antecedents. So we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on pronoun and antecedents. And before we start with our lesson on pronoun and antecedents, we're going to log into aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged into aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts. And then grade 6. All right, once we've selected grade 6, we are going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of pronouns and antecedents. So in our previous lesson, we did pronouns and antecedents, and we had to identify the pronoun as well as the antecedents, right? So in today's lesson, we are also going to do pronouns and antecedents, but we're doing the chapter of pronouns and antecedents, but the lesson we are doing is to use the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent. So it is basically a continuation of pronouns and antecedents. So our chapter is pronouns and antecedents. The subject is English language arts, grade 6. And the lesson for today, like we said, is to use the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent. And once again, it is a continuation of the lesson that we did in our previous lesson on pronouns and antecedents. And we are doing our tutorial lesson on aplusstudents.ca. So if you do want to go back, recap, go over the lessons that we are doing, chapters that we are doing, the chapter, subject, grade, as well as lesson is on the board at the moment. And we are on aplusstudents.ca. So even currently, we are going to be working on aplusstudents.ca. Okay, so as we're about to start with our lesson, we said a pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun or a noun phrase. So the pronoun takes a place, or it basically is a word that takes the place of a noun or noun phrase, right? So instead of saying constantly Jude, Judy, Nadine, Natasha, John, Jack. So instead of constantly saying the name, you can maybe, for example, say the name once, and then thereafter you can either say he, she, her, him, right? Or it. So the pronoun then is, instead of saying the name, we maybe say her, we say him, we say they, we say your, which she, it, me, right? Or her, I, you, and so on. So that is the pronoun, right? So instead of then saying the person's name all the time, you can just say, maybe we are talking about her or we're talking about him, right? Or so on. And the noun or the noun phrase, so that noun or noun phrase that the pronoun refers to is called the antecedent. Basically, that antecedent is the actual name, right? So if, for example, the name is Nadine, right? Then the pronoun will maybe be where you maybe refer to it as her or she. She is teaching now. So who's teaching? Nadine is giving a lesson. She is giving a lesson, right? So she is the pronoun and the antecedent is Nadine. And the antecedent is basically that noun or the noun, or let's say the noun or the noun phrase that the pronoun refers to. Antecedent, it's Nadine. It's the actual name. But the pronoun, instead of saying Nadine, is then where we refer to it as, or we refer to her as she. All right. So when it comes to pronouns, right, we have singular pronouns and we have plural pronouns. And a singular pronoun, so a singular pronoun, it takes the place of a singular noun. So a singular pronoun takes the place of a singular noun. And singular pronouns, they include I, you, she, he, it, me, him, her, his, its, my, and your, right? So these are the pronouns. So I, right, if I make mention of myself, so I being Nadine as the antecedent, but if I use the pronoun to refer to myself, then I say I, because I is referring to myself. I'm referring to myself. I'm referring to you, right? Then you are the pronoun. Sorry, you are the pronoun that I'm referring to, but that is without even making mention of your name. And if I do make mention of your name, then that is called the antecedent. She. Like I say, instead of saying the person's name, we can say she. Instead of the male's name, we say he. Instead of the animal's name, we say it. For example, him, her, and so on. So that is examples of the singular pronouns, right? Or basically that is the singular pronouns. And remember we said the antecedent is, they say the noun or the noun phrase that the pronoun refers to is called the antecedent. All right, so now we're going to look at a few examples. And I'm going to underline the antecedent and I'm going to underline or let's say I'm going to circle the pronoun. So I'm going to underline the antecedent and I'm going to circle the pronoun. So Rachel is tired, even though she slept for 10 hours last night. So Rachel is tired, even though she slept for 10 hours last night. So we need to, if we identify the antecedent within that sentence, we can then say it is Rachel. So Rachel, we are referring to Rachel. Rachel is the noun, right? Rachel is the noun. And if we specifically make mention of the pronoun, right? The pronoun that takes place of the noun, it is she. So she is our pronoun. And Rachel is our antecedent. So Rachel is our antecedent, and she, which takes the place of our noun, is she. She is the pronoun. Surprisingly, my brother's basketball team won all its games this season. So, surprisingly, my brother's basketball team won all its games this season. We need to select either the noun or the noun phrase within that sentence. And if we select the noun or the noun phrase within that sentence, we can say, my brother's basketball team. So, my brother's basketball team. And the pronoun is its games. Its games. So, who lost its games? It's the basketball team. So, its is the pronoun, and the antecedent is my brother's basketball team, or you can just say the basketball team. Can you open this jar of pickles? I can't get it open. Can you open this jar of pickles? I can't get it open. In this case, they are basically giving us only pronouns because there we have you and there we have I. Because referring to you, I can't open it. Can you open it? Because I can't open it. So that is singular pronouns as well as our antecedents that we have identified. And we see the pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun or noun phrase. And the pronoun can either be I, or it can be you, it can be she, he, it, him, her, referring to someone or something. And then we said we have singular pronouns, which takes the place of a singular noun. And a singular pronoun, we made mention of that. And with us identifying the pronoun, right? And the pronoun being the word that takes place of the noun or the noun phrase. But then again, the noun or the noun phrase that the pronoun refers to, we call that the antecedent. And the pronoun must agree with its antecedent. So Rachel is tired even though she slept for 10 hours last night. So she is Rachel. Rachel is she. So we can even say Rachel is tired even though Rachel slept for 10 hours last night. But instead of repeating Rachel, we then make mention of the pronoun she. So with us having the singular pronoun, we also have a plural pronoun, right? We also have a plural pronoun. And the plural pronoun, it takes the place of plural nouns, or it takes the place of nouns that are joined by the conjunction and. And plural pronouns, they include we, you, they, us, them, our, your, and their. And as you can see, everything refers to more than one, either person or thing. It refers to more than one person or thing. All right, so if we now identify the antecedents as well as the pronoun within the sentences of plural pronouns, right? We can then say, my neighbors So I'm going to underline the antecedent and I'm going to circle the plural pronoun. So my neighbors spent spent the weekend. That was me exaggerating with entire. So my neighbors spent the weekend at their whose cabin? Their cabin, referring to my neighbors' cabin. So my neighbors spent the weekend at their cabin in South Lake Tahoe, Tahoe. I can't say the word. In South Lake. So basically, our antecedent is my neighbors, and there is our pronoun, our plural pronoun. If we look at the second sentence, where are the cans of soup I just bought? They aren't in the cupboard. So which means that cans of soup, or the cans of soup. So the cans of soup is our antecedent. They are the pronoun, or is the pronoun of the cans of soup. Because we are looking for the cans of soup. And we're saying they, which are the cans of soup, is not in the cupboard. Because instead of saying they, we could have also said, where are the cans of soup I just bought? The cans of soup aren't in the cupboard. But instead of repeating, we just say they are not in the cupboard. And it refers to more than one can of soup. Easy and I. Easy and I is the antecedent. Spent all day on our, which is the pronoun, science project. So easy and I, which refers to both of us, spent all day on our science project. And that is basically our antecedent as well as our plural pronouns. And remember, when it comes to pronouns and antecedents, the antecedent is the noun or the noun phrase, right? And then we have the pronoun, and the pronoun takes the place of a noun or it takes the place of a noun phrase. And that noun or noun phrase refers to, or we call that the antecedent. And like we said, we have singular pronouns and we have plural pronouns. So the antecedent is the noun or noun phrase, right, which can either refer to one person or one thing, or it can refer to more than one person and one thing, and that is where the singular pronoun comes in as well as the plural pronoun comes in. All right, so now if we look at this example of the antecedent, the noun represented by a pronoun. So if we look at this example, right, it says antecedents of she, the antecedents of she. So Janet says she is allergic to celery, right? Which means that Janet is our antecedent because Janet is our noun, right? Janet is our noun. And that noun is represented by a pronoun, which is she. So Janet says she is allergic to celery. Who is the she? It is Janet, right? It's like saying Janet says Janet is allergic to celery. So Janet is then the antecedent, and our pronoun is she. So Janet is represented by she, or she is represented by Janet because she is the pronoun of Janet, which is our noun. Our next one is Venus is odd. It rotates clockwise. So Venus, which is our planet, right? It's odd or is odd. It rotates clockwise, which means that Venus, instead of saying Venus is odd, Venus rotates clockwise, we then represent it, or it is represented by that word Venus. So Venus is then our noun or antecedent, and it is representing Venus, which is our pronoun. And then the last example is Alice is a law student. She enjoys reading cases. So Alice is a law student. She enjoys reading cases. So basically, our antecedent or our noun is Alice, right? So Alice is a law student. So instead of saying Alice enjoys reading cases, we then represent it with a pronoun, which is she. And she is referring to Alice. So Alice is a law student and she enjoys reading cases. So she is our pronoun and Alice is our antecedent, which is the noun. All right, so now we're going to a+students.ca. And we're going to our lesson, which is to use the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent. And I literally went over all of these descriptions. Right, where we said a pronoun is a word that takes place of a noun or noun phrase. And the noun or noun phrase that the pronoun refers to, we call that the antecedent. And the pronoun needs to agree with the antecedent. And then we said we have singular pronouns. And we have plural pronouns. Right? And like I say, we already went over our singular pronouns as well as our plural pronouns. And the pronoun, it takes the place of a noun or a noun phrase. And that noun or noun phrase, right, that the pronoun refers to or that the pronoun represents, right, or that the pronoun agrees with is called the antecedent. All right, so now we're going to complete the sentence with the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold. Last winter, my parents and I, flew to Florida for a vacation. On tour of the Everglades, we saw signs that says, caution, watch for alligators. So my parents and I, right, that is plural. Firstly, that is plural. So I'm going to write the word here, plural. Right? It refers to more than one person. So which means that we need to have a plural pronoun that refers to or that agrees with our antecedent, which is my parents and I. So my parents and I. So instead of again saying on my parents and I's tour, we can then say on our tour of the Everglades, we saw signs that says caution, watch for alligators. So our refers to or represents or agrees with the antecedent, which is my parents and I. And that is a plural pronoun. Our is a plural pronoun. So our is our plural. There we have our. My sister and I went camping with stepdad. He snored so loudly that we couldn't sleep. So my sister, sorry, and I went camping with stepdad. He snored so loudly we couldn't sleep. What do you think will be the pronoun that represents or agrees with our antecedent, which is my sister and I? So, what do you think might be our pronoun within that sentence? All right, so if we select our pronoun, it's definitely going to be plural because my sister and I refers to more than one person. So we're going to say my sister and I went camping with our stepdad. He snored so loudly that we couldn't sleep. So our is our plural pronoun, and my sister and I is our antecedent. All right. We need to complete the sentence with the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold. Pablo Sarasate, so Pablo Sarasate became very wealthy as a famous violin player. After long career, he left most of his money to Pamplona, Spain, the town in which he grew up. So we now need to identify the pronoun that represents or agrees or refers to Pablo Sarasate. And this is going to be a singular pronoun that we need to identify. Because firstly, Pablo Sarasate is our antecedent. We need to identify our singular pronoun. So Pablo Sarasate became very wealthy as a famous violin player. After his long career, right? So his, pardon, is our singular plural pronoun. It's a singular pronoun which agrees or refers or represents our antecedent, which is the noun Pablo Sarasate. So after his long career, he left most of his money to Pamplona, Spain, the town in which he grew up. All right. So that is, we have identified a singular as well as plural pronouns within these few example activities that we did, right? As well as the antecedent. And remember, your pronoun needs to either agree, represent, or refer to your antecedent, and the antecedent being the noun or the noun phrase. So now we're going on to our test. We need to complete the sentence with the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold. Christopher and I plan to vote for our friend or me friend Mary in the city council election. What do you think is the correct pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in this test? Is it option one, Christopher and I refers to our, or Christopher and I refers to me? What do you think is the correct answer? The pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold, that agrees or refers to Christopher and I. Is it option one, which is our, or option two, which is me? All right, so if we select the pronoun, right, if we select the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold, then yes, we can say our. So our refers to Christopher and I. So well done. Yes, our is correct. So well done. Professor Santiago is an astronomer at the University of Chicago. She invited us to visit her, or she invited us to visit his and look through the telescope at the Yerkes Observatory. What is the correct pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold, which is Professor Santiago? Is it her or is it his? So Professor Santiago is an astronomer at the University of Chicago. She invited us. She invited us to visit her. Yes, so her is correct. It's a great job. Her is correct. Pablo Sarasate became very wealthy as a famous violin player after his long career or after her long career. He left most of his money to Pamplona, Spain, the town in which he grew up. Is it his long career or her long career? His or her? All right, so if we select the correct pronoun, right, then we will say after his, because he's referring also to a male. His long career, he left most of his money to the Pamplona, Spain, the town in which he grew up. So his is the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent, which is Pablo Sarasate. Milton Bradley. So Milton Bradley didn't just create board games. His interest in learning made him a pioneer, or his interest in learning made her a pioneer in the field of early childhood education. So we now need to select the correct pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold, which refers to Milton Bradley. Is it him or her? And if we select the correct pronoun, then we can say his interest in learning made him a pioneer in the field of early childhood education. So, him is the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent, which is Milton Bradley. Philosopher John Dalton is credited with developing our modern theory about atoms. Dalton proposed that they make up elements, or Dalton proposed that them make up elements and combine to form chemical compounds. So Christopher, so philosopher, sorry, philosopher John Dalton is credited with developing our modern theory about atoms. Dalton proposed that they or them make up elements and combine to form chemical compounds. All right, and if we select the pronoun, right, which refers to the antecedent, right, atoms, we can say Dalton proposed that they make up elements and combine to form chemical compounds. So they is our correct answer. All right. So that is our pronoun and antecedents, right? And you said with pronoun and antecedents, a pronoun, it takes the place of a noun or a noun phrase. And that noun or noun phrase that the pronoun either agrees with, refers to, or represents is called the antecedent, right? And usually the antecedent is either a name of a person or it refers to anything, right? But your pronoun needs to agree with the antecedent. And we can either have a singular pronoun or we can have a plural pronoun. All right. So now we're going to A plus student, A plus classes.ca. So before we end our lesson, we're going to do an activity on A plus classes.ca. And if we log into A plus classes.ca, right, with your login details, then we're going to learning material. Then we're going to, yeah, on top by the bar, we go to grades, grade 6. And then we're going to scroll down. Here it says, what would you like to do? We would like to language arts by the green book. Then we have 4 of our workbooks, right? Then we have 4 workbooks under language arts. We are going to click and select practice grammar in the language art book. So we're going to select the second workbook, which is practice grammar in the language arts workbook. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to page 17. All right, so here we need to identify the antecedents, all right? They say underline once the personal pronoun in the second sentence that refers to a noun in the first. So my father and I went camping in the desert. We took a walk the first night out. So my father and I went camping in the desert. We took a walk the first night out. So our antecedent, right, is if we look at the antecedent, right, it will then be my father and I. So it's my father and I. And our pronoun will then be we took a walk the first night. So we agrees with my father and I, right? The stars seem brighter than back home. They seemed so bright because we were in the desert far away from the city lights. So if we identify the antecedents, we would then identify it as the stars, right? And the pronoun that agrees or refers or represents the stars are they. Jack went back and got out the telescope. It was brand new. So, which means that it refers to the telescope. So, the telescope is in the antecedent, not Jack, because it refers to the telescope. It does not refer to Jack. So, it is our pronoun that represents, agrees, or refers to the telescope. And the last one, my father told me to look towards the east. He pointed at a light streaking across the sky. And then he, being our pronoun, refers to my father. So he is our pronoun that refers, represents, or it agrees with my father. All right, so that is basically our lesson on pronouns and antecedents. And we see that the pronoun refers, actually, it always refers to a noun, right? Because instead of repeating the name, the noun all the time, we can then just basically mention the pronoun. And that noun is the pronoun's antecedent. So that noun, which is either naming, which is either a thing that we're making mention of, we call that the antecedent. And the pronoun needs to either agree, it needs to refer, or it needs to represent the antecedent. Right? All right. So, grade 6, that is now the end of our lesson on pronoun and antecedents. Right? Once again, we say that the pronoun, it takes the place of a noun or a noun phrase, and that noun or noun phrase that either that is represented by the pronoun, we call that the antecedent. And always remember that your pronoun needs to agree, it needs to refer, or it needs to represent your antecedent. All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on pronoun and antecedents. Thank you very much for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have an amazing evening further. Goodbye.